I mean, they're number one in the league with 16 sacks. I mean, last year, I think they only ended the year with, 29 sacks? So they're approaching that number through 4 games. They forced the most 3-and-outs in the league so far. Teams go 3-and-out 47% of the time. So it seems almost half the time.
It's a midweek edition of Birds 365, an undefeated Wednesday as we lead up to the game against the Cardinals coming up on Sunday out in Arizona. Here to give us some insight on the Birds is a proud West Virginia alum who's already set a record this year, have his alma mater losing by 13 points in overtime. That's not easy. Stop and think about that for a second, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, how does that happen?
13 points in overtime is a feat. I don't know that it's ever been done before in the history of college football, but yeah, the Mountaineers did that this year.
I'm not a mathematician. How does that work?
Interception return for a touchdown in the overtime period.
Yeah,
we were the number one party school in the country when I was there. And some people would say that I was the best partier. So I feel like the Heisman Trophy winner.
That is. It's always big when you beat Arizona State in any party rankings. So that's very impressive. I thought it was one of those things like stopping a 2-point conversion. I think they just killed the game right there.
I thought so too, but no, they ran it back for the touchdown and they didn't use the extra point. But the year that we were there, when Playboy magazine used to do their party rankings, the one year we were number one, and then the next year we weren't in there, and it said asterisks, sorry, West Virginia, professionals weren't included.
Oh, very good. That's a major compliment. They used to say that about Albany State, too, and we weren't on the level of size that West Virginia was, but we held our own in the small school division of partying in college. All right, Gill, I had to pimp you a little bit there because I just was checking out West Virginia, see who they're going to lose to this week. That'd be Baylor. So I realized they lost by 13 points in overtime. I said, how the hell did that happen? Had to look it up. Eagles won't lose by 13 points in overtime this week because you don't do that in the National Football League. Can the Eagles lose at all?
Well, Jody, I mean, they're not going to be an underdog, I don't think, the rest of the season. I mean, maybe at Dallas late in the year, if Dallas is still humming and everything's going good for them. That's the only game. I can't imagine they're a dog at home against Green Bay in Week 12. So realistically, they're not going to be an underdog in a game, but we know it's kind of far-fetched to think they're not going to have an off week. Now, when they do have that off week, I guess the question becomes, what happens? What is it? Does the offense not hum? Is it the defense that has a breakdown? Because so far, the questions on both sides have been, hey, is Jalen Hurts going to lead this offense? Yes, that's been the answer. Hey, is John Gannon's defense going to tighten up? So far, yes, that's been the answer. So the question marks through 4 games entering the season so far have been yeses. The answers have been yes, they will.
Yeah, let's talk about that defense, Mike, because it has been unbelievable. It's Wednesday, so it's Player of the Week day in Philadelphia. Hasson Reddick, 3 consecutive Defensive Player of the Week awards. First time since 2000, the 2000 Buccaneers. You got to go back to that defense to have this happen before. And yet everybody,
one of the Barbers,
yeah, I'm not sure of the players. They didn't list the players. I'll have to look that up. But
John Lynch,
a lot of great players on that defense. A lot of great players. Warren Sapp,
guy is that.
So I mean, that's sort of a legendary defense. Derek Brooks, was he there? Hall of Famer. This defense is playing well, and yet everybody looks at the offense, and I do too. How good has this defense been, and is this sort of sustainable to be in this level?
I mean, they're number one in the league with 16 sacks. I mean, last year, I think they only ended the year with 29 sacks. So they're approaching that number through 4 games. They forced the most 3-and-outs in the league so far. Teams go 3-and-out 47% of the time. So it seems almost half the time you're getting 3 snaps and you're off the field. They only give up 277 yards a game. So how real are they? So far, they are showing two things. One, that they can get to the quarterback with 4. Now, how sustainable is that? Well, look at the teams they play coming up. Probably pretty sustainable. The big test will be, guys, much like last year. They rolled off some games down the stretch, and the narrative was, well, they're not really playing anybody. And then they played Tampa, and they couldn't do what they were doing against Tampa when what they were doing against Washington and New York down the stretch. Will they be able to translate this over a 3-week period when they face 3 teams that are better than the 17 they're going to face here? If that's possible.
But who's good in this league? Who is good in this league?
The Eagles could win every week, and everybody's going to say, especially Dallas fan and Giant fan out there, well, they're not beating anybody. Well, neither is anybody else.
Yeah.
Agreed. When they get to Green Bay, I think people go, oh, at least they played Green Bay. And if you're right, if Dallas somehow wins this week against LA against the defending champion Rams, and then the Eagles beat them, you can't deny. Cooper Rush or not, Dak Prescott returning or not, you beat a 4-1 Cowboy team. You got to get some credit for it on a national basis. That's
a playoff level legit defense. If you beat that defense, you beat a pretty good defense.
That's true. And they're doing it with other guys other than Michael Parsons. If it was just Michael Parsons absolutely everywhere, which he seems to be on the field on a week-in, week-out basis, but other guys are making plays for that Dallas defense too. All right, on the defense for the Eagles, we're talking about this a little bit now in number 1, Mike, about the whole Jalen Mills contract situation and how high is high. And all we talked about all offseason was, is Jalen good enough? Is he going to be good enough? Did the Eagles drop the ball by not getting Russell Wilson? Blah, 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 blah. And Jalen's played the way he's played for the first 4 weeks, which is pretty damn spectacular, which is going to lead to how much is it going to cost to keep him. In the meantime, the Eagles got a bunch of other guys that are also free agents this offseason. Howie's going to have to do some real work this offseason, getting Jalen done and making decisions on all these other guys. We talked about the linebacker position earlier. I want to ask you about Fletcher Cox. He's been pretty good the first 4 weeks. I still don't understand the whole salary cap machination. They let him go. They bought him out. They took the salary cap hit this year and then brought him back on a 1-year, $14 million. And he didn't look like a $14 million player in 2021 for me, but they were estimating he was going to step back up in 2-4 games he has. What's going to happen with Fletcher Cox at the end of this year?
That's an interesting point because, we asked John Gannon, are you doing anything differently with the defense? And most people are like, not really, and one of the guys who struggled last year because of the way they called the defense was Fletcher Cox. So are they using him different? It doesn't appear. Is it just that he's had a rebirth? Is it that there's better guys around him that has allowed him to take, he's hooked so many double teams over the years. Well, now with Reddick and Sweat and obviously having more pressure, maybe he's not getting as much of the double teams. I don't watch the whole film back to see what kind of double teams percentage he's getting. But, Jody, the fact that you're asking that question about the offseason and the next season, are we already bored with the 4-0 team here that this team is so good? We're looking
you gotta look at you got to make room for the Jalen Hurts contract, Mike. You got to make room.
Yes, you do. And, this is the point that comes up for a lot. Like the Giants are going to have the Saquon Barkley decision. Do you give that guy the contract? But then if you give him the contract,
you do not. I just made that decision for the
Giants. But let me interrupt. And I'll ask both you guys this. The Eagles don't play running back. The Giants don't. Nobody. Who the hell's going to pay a running back? We always say, oh, our team's not going to pay him.
Well, there's some dummies out there.
Somebody else is. Who are those knuckleheads? Please identify for me.
Carolina, Dallas,
Tennessee,
Minnesota, Tennessee. These are the dummies of the world.
Right. And they're the teams that made the decision to sign their running backs. And then what did they have to do? Amari Cooper, sorry. A.J. Brown, sorry, don't have the money to keep you because we made the decision to go running back over wide receiver. And then, like Seattle, they had to decide, what are we going to do here? Couldn't afford to keep Russell Wilson because he was making so much money because then they were going to have to get rid of DK Metcalf. So they made the decision, all right, sorry, Russell, we're going to keep Metcalf. You seem to be on the decline. We have some friction here. When you sign someone of that magnitude to that money, decisions have to be made. Now, the interesting part about the Eagles is, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have like the second most cap space coming up.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. And they had the 4th overall pick in the draft. If the season ended today, it does not. but if it ended today, which I think is ironic because the Saints are the fourth best team and they have the fourth pick in the draft.
Thanks, BFF.
I'm joking, but I'm joking for that. But yeah, Howie's done a tremendous job shaping this up. And, one thing he's done, and people, one of the nitpicks you get, I don't know if you get this, Mike. You tell me if you get this. I get constant, why can't Nakobe Dean get on the field? What's wrong with Nakobe Dean? Why do these people care?
Well, Jordan Davis gets it too. I mean, not as much, but it's the fact that the criticism that Roseman has gotten over the years is the misses in the draft. And when they draft, they want to see those guys perform to validate the job Roseman does. So I think it's, hey, he drafted these guys. They better be good, because if he's not drafting well, we're going to have problems at some point, because everybody wants to try to bring it back to his inability to hit in the draft in recent years. In the big misses, we all know. We don't have to go back through them, but people get like, well, he drafted these guys. They better play.
But John's right, and there's no bigger Nakobe Dean fan in the Delaware Valley than me. I talked this guy. I would have been okay if the Eagles had taken him when they had 3 first-round picks. If they had used their 3rd first-round pick on Nakobe Dean, I would have been okay with it. I thought he was going to be that good a player. White and Edwards are doing such a good job. Sorry, he's just not good enough to supplant either one of those guys. That's sports 101. And Eagle fans are smart enough, or should be smart enough, to understand that. It's not that Nakobe Dean can't play or they're holding back because they fear he's going to stink when they put him out there. No, the guys who are on the field are doing a job. Plain and simple. Why should they pay the price because Howie Roseman wants to look like a genius with a 3rd-round steal with Nakobe Dean?
Well, and the big thing is, guys, when you look at why this team is good, one of the reasons is they have depth. A guy goes out. They were on their 3rd left tackle the other day, by the way. How many teams go to their 3rd left tackle and generally after like the first series didn't miss a beat? I mean, it was generally Dillard would have played in that spot, but he was out, so they had to go to Driscoll, who never played in that spot. You lost 2/3 of your cornerbacks, and I mean, Josiah Scott, I don't think had a great day. But who loses 2/3 of their secondary and essentially has a dominating defensive performance? They lost their right guard in the game. Did anybody notice? No. So the same thing will happen if Kaiser White or TJ Edwards go out. They have a guy that will step in and probably do the job. And the other team that had that same step-in nature was the 17 team. You lost Jason Peters, Vaitai comes in. You lose Ronald Darby, somebody else steps in. They lost Jordan Hicks. Here comes Nigel Bradham taking over. So this team has some depth that you can kind of hang your hat on over at 17.
By the way, I'll give you guys, since we've been talking about Pro Football Focus too much, I'll give you one you'll like, Jody. Linebacker. Matt Milano, number 1. Bobby Wagner, Hall of Famer, number 2. TJ Edwards, number 3.
But you got to force feed Nakobe Dean onto the field. No, you don't. Not if TJ's playing at the level he's playing at.
Yeah. It's bizarre to me. And you brought up Jordan Davis, so let's talk about him, Mike. I think a lot of one thing, Jonathan, again, and stress, you and I have talked about this, is win on first down, you can be more aggressive on 2nd and 3rd downs because you're facing whatever, 2nd and 10. Sometimes you're behind the sticks. The fact that they can get Jordan Davis out there and what he excels at as a sort of run defender, and then you have the guys who can rush the passer. It's a perfect situation. Why? And Jody, I talked about this with you. I was concerned about this because if Eagles fans don't see sacks, like, to me, Fletcher Cox is the exact same player. The only difference is he's getting sacks this year, and Eagles fans think he's playing better. In fact, I'm going to look up Fletcher right now. We're doing the rankings today. But why are people so insistent on getting Jordan Davis out there when it would be in situations that he's not as good at?
It goes back to, I just want the satisfaction and gratification of seeing the guy that you drafted in the 1st round making an impact. Whatever it is, like having that guy it's almost like a fan's, they can wear it on their sleeve. That guy we drafted, and look how good he is, to kind of give you this hope. And it's like, hey, nobody wants to pound their chest and say, we've got a lot of depth. That is not something.
Well, it is on the offensive line. Get back to Fletcher. Okay, 2021, 29 of 108. He was 29th of 108, which is pretty good. 2022, right now, 42 of 124. But people think he's better because he's getting sacks. It's bizarre to me.
What's interesting about Fletcher Cox, too, I don't know if you guys watched the CBS pregame. They had Fletcher and Brandon kind of talking to each other on the couch. It was kind of a cool thing where Fletcher was almost interviewing Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham has played 2 extra seasons, I believe, or maybe it's vice versa. One's been in the league 2 years longer. Who got drafted?
Brandon's been in, yeah.
Right. So
Brandon's got,
he's
Fletcher's
got
played more. Yeah.
He's got 2 extra sacks than Fletcher Cox does. Fletcher Cox is a defensive tackle, and he has 61 total career sacks, which is like 5th on the Eagles list. Brandon's got 63, which is 4th. He's right behind. He's trying to catch, I forget who's Trent Cole's in front of him or somebody. But that shows you how good Fletcher Cox has been as a defensive tackle, getting 61 sacks. And, John, to go to your point, because he did that, he was a defensive tackle who got all that pressure. That's the litmus test of whether he's performing or not, because that's how we remember him.
Well, yeah, he's a declining player. I mean, he's not what he once was. He was once considered the second best defensive tackle. Everybody's playing for second place behind Aaron Donald, and he's no longer in that conversation. So he is a descending player, but I think over the past couple of years, the narrative has been he's not a good player, and he has been a good player.
I think this is a clear sign, guys, that the Eagles have talent around him now, that they can't put so much attention. He was the guy. If you said, all right, we're playing the Eagles this week, who are we game planning for? 91. All right, we got to put 2 guys on him at all times. Well, now, who are we game planning for? Well, they've got 91, but remember, last year they didn't have 55 either. He missed most of the year. Well, now they have 55. They've got 7. I'm talking like a coach where I'm just remembering the numbers here. But
yeah, they all say that.
I got 7 on the outside here. I can't use as many guys on Fletcher Cox because I have 7 here, 55 there. Josh Sweat, I don't remember his number, right? 94.
94.
So they've got more options, which means less options for Fletcher.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times over the years defensive coaches have talked to us and said 91, 55. That's who we're game planning for with the Eagles. Now, and you're probably having a different conversation.
Put 2 in that conversation.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about game planning from the Arizona Cardinals, what they should be game planning to take advantage of. And that's Josiah Scott. He didn't play well last week. He had played well. John had given me good. He's looking good in practice and everything. They had cross-trained him, safety and backup cornerback. All right, this is going to be a guy who will be part of that very good Eagle depth. Not so much last week. Forced in when Maddox went down. Any chance for a change, or do you think that the Cardinals just continue to attack him? Do you think he steps up? Last week didn't know he was going to be in there. This week knows it's more, perhaps a little bit differently. Are you worried about Josiah Scott in the Eagle defensive backfield, Mike?
Well, Jody, I guess it matters whether Slay's playing or not. What do we know about him? It's Wednesday here. If he plays, then maybe you get a little bit more options with McPherson who can help out there. But if Slay doesn't play, then I guess you're back to square one with McPherson on the outside, and I guess Scott's going to have to get a bulk of the snaps. And the interesting part, they have Zach Ertz on this team. And I would imagine they're going to try to find ways to get him into the slot, spread him a little bit and say, hey, let's get Zach Ertz matched up in their slot and see if we can't win that battle there. So, yes, Jody, there would be some concern if Slay doesn't play and Scott gets a lot of snaps and you're getting situations where if Arizona and I'm game planning, I'm trying to find ways to get Zach Ertz in my slot where he's matched up on Josiah Scott as many times as possible.
Yeah, and JG probably went down the road he shouldn't have. He said yesterday, it's going to be Scott again in the slot if Devonta can't go. A little bit surprised by that. Now, I thought there's a number of different ways they can go. Chauncey can play in the slot. He's better in the slot than he is at safety. He hasn't been good at safety. and Zach, but Zach would have had to kick outside anyway once Darius Slay got hurt very
Right.
early in the game, so he would have been playing anyway. But I was a little surprised he went down that road. He said, "Nope, Josiah is going to be the guy." So that is a bit of a concern. But I want to stick on this game planning because I've said this, and I don't know the answer to this, so I want both your answers to this. If you're a defensive coordinator, what are you trying to take away from the Eagles? What do you start if you're Bill Belichick? Because Belichick's famous for, all right, I'm going to take away this and force you to beat me. What are you trying to take away from this Eagles team?
Mike, you can go first.
It's almost like, okay, if I said, tell that, the team ran for 50 times for over 200 yards last week, and you would say, okay, make them throw the ball. Well, they've shown they can do that. All right, let's double A.J. Brown. Well, the one week they tried to take him out, Smith beat you. If you try to take Smith away, you're not going to do that because Brown will beat you. Goddard's there. Who do you take out? I don't know. I think you probably try to change your look on what you do with Hurts. I don't know how many teams have had the spy just kind of standing there watching him, much like, these teams used to do when we saw Randall and there'd be a guy in the middle of the field. I don't know that teams have really tried to implore that tactic yet where they use that spy almost exclusively, but then that takes away another guy in coverage. So what do you take away? It's got to be Jalen Hurts. You got to keep trying to force him into mistakes that he's not making right now, but he's probably the one guy that you still have the most questions about in this offense.
Here's how I'd answer your question, Johnny Mac. It wouldn't be this week because I think the Cardinals are an above-average team. Don't think they're a great team. Last year, I bet on them to go to the Super Bowl, but only because I got 45-1. And when they were 9-0, I was feeling pretty good about myself. That went by the wayside. But later in the year, the Eagles are going to have some teams. We can make the Commanders one of them just because they've already beat them in their house. They come here to Philadelphia. What the hell are you going to do? I'd go back to what Detroit did. I know the Eagles scored 38 points in game number 1. I bring the house. I just turn up the pressure. If I'm going to give up 60-yard touchdowns, so be it. But yeah. I'm going to try and get to Hurts. I'm going to try and get a tip ball. I'm going to try and get 6 sacks like the Eagles have shown capable of doing. Yeah, that's the kind of way you need to look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, they're better than us. So we have to go to extremes to be able to tilt the field and try and make it even. So that's how I would handle. I don't know if the Cardinals would do that this week, but if I were a lesser team, that's what I would do. I'd be 5 and 6.
One guy for them who always seems to pop up and do something is Gardeck, the linebacker, and you wonder if he's the guy that's kind of spying around, or Zaven Collins is a pretty athletic linebacker. Do they have him kind of running around? He had 8 tackles a couple of weeks ago, so could he be a guy that kind of stands in the middle of the field? Their linebackers are definitely going to be a key, and I don't know how strong they are at that position.
Johnny, let me get your take on him because Mike mentioned the linebacker who was supposed to be Isaiah Simmons. I remember when he came out in the draft a couple of years ago, he's going to revolutionize the National Football League.
Yeah, it never happens.
He doesn't have a position, but he's going to make plays from absolutely everywhere. We've seen a guy like that. His name is the linebacker from Penn State down in Dallas.
Yeah, Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons. Every once in a while, his name just jumps out of my head. Yeah, that can happen. I never thought Isaiah Simmons was going to be that guy. But some people talked him up as he's the best defensive player in the draft. Don't worry about position.
Players like that.
He's never turned out to be that player.
And I'm not even giving Dallas credit because I'm going to toot my own horn. Why not once? I remember coming up to last year's draft, most of the draft people would rank Parsons as an inside linebacker, as an off-ball linebacker. And I said to you, Jody, I said to everybody, he looks like a stinking pass rusher to me. But everybody says he's 6'1", he's 6'2", he's not long enough. Same thing with Aaron Donald when they said he was too small. I said, look at the guy's athleticism. And same in a similar vein to Hasson Reddick here, people said the same thing about him coming out. Oh, we're going to make him an off-ball linebacker. No, you can't play off-ball linebacker. Let him go after the passer. And he's been able to do it. Deebo Samuel's the guy offensively. Jody, I say this all the time. If I want Deebo, if you're bringing Kyle Shanahan along, if you're getting this run-of-the-mill coaching, I don't want Deebo Samuel because you have to use him this specific way.
Well,
Players
but then
like that,
you got to give the Cowboy defense coordinator credit because he has used
I
Mike
do.
Parsons perfectly.
Dan Quinn, I do, but he only did it because of the injury. Remember, he was playing off-ball linebacker last year. And then DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt, and they said, God, we need a pass rusher. Let's see if he can do it. And they put him in there out of desperation, and they went, wow. And now so they weren't going to do it. They were forced to do it. Players like that concern me. Isaiah Simmons is another player like that. There's not enough out-of-the-box thinkers in the NFL. That's just my opinion when it comes to either offensively manufactured touch players. I don't like them because
except Deebo.
Well, I like Deebo with Kyle. You have to be very disciplined. Deebo Samuel's my favorite player in the NFL. I say it all the time. I love watching him. But if he were on a normal team that's going to make him run routes, the route tree, like he's Marvin Harrison, it's not going to work. And
there's not a whole heck of a lot of those guys left in the league, by the way.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of coaches who can take advantage of a player like Isaiah Simmons. And, that's why I don't like players like that.
Yeah, that's, and right now, I don't know. I guess the last couple of weeks, it seems that Reddick is getting more to the quarterback, the strip sacks, the sacks. Are they using him, though, in the way that we thought they would?
Yeah, he's doing a really good job. Early in his career in Arizona, and that'll be a big narrative this week. They were playing him at off-ball linebacker, and they were saying, "What a disappointment!"
Well, you like the way Gannon's so far. You like the way Gannon's using him. You're saying,
yeah. I mean, what's not to like? 3.5 sacks,
I think it goes into everybody wondering: is John Gannon? Does he know what he's doing? Is he calling the right defenses?
Well, he still gets, because Hasson drops like 3 or 4 times a game, drops into coverage. And I can't tell you how many people say, why are you doing that? Why are you doing it? And I compare it. I always use my baseball analogies. If you have a power pitcher, does he throw a fastball every time? You got to throw a curveball in there. And they drop him into a zone, and hopefully you fool the quarterback. But there are some people who say, he should never drop into coverage. Now, those critics I don't get. Jody, what were you? You look like you had something to say there.
Let me put this one to you, Mike. Last one, I like my hypothetical questions. This will annoy the snot out of all 358 people streamed in right now. Watching NFL Network after we wrap up the show yesterday. I think Kyle Brandt's segment of Angry Runs is as good as there is in football coverage. Any channel, any station, anytime, anywhere. I just love it. I got to record it on Tuesday mornings. I did. Went back and watched it. And then they did a segment about they need to change the phrase double doink because I guess doink has different meanings. You can use the word doink differently. Urban Dictionary, look it up. Blah, blah, blah. Just shut up. It goes from the segment all week to the stupidest thing I heard all week. I love double doink. Let's say the Eagles are trailing 31-30, and they've got the ball and they make a couple of first down. The clock's running out. And Dicker the kicker, which would fit perfectly with double doink, if you know where I'm going, does just that. Upright, crossbar, no good. Cardinals 31-30. Who gets killed Sunday night?
There's a lot there, man.
Yes, there is. That's why they pay me these small bucks is to come up with stuff like this.
So now, how realistic is it that Cameron Dicker is going to have to kick?
Very realistic.
It's not a zero possibility.
I would, if you made me bet today, I'd say Cameron Dicker's going to kick more than.
By the way, he's a pretty damn good punter too. He can launch. He can average like 47 yards a punt at Texas. So if Cameron Dicker, the kicker, double doinks, he would be a fool and a jerk for missing the kick, and then he would be the biggest.
Yeah, I'm not going down that.
We know where we're going. I was actually kind of referencing Howie, because it's Howie and his staff. They've been scouting these guys, bringing guys in. They had a workout yesterday. Johnny Mac told me they brought in 2 kickers. Yeah. Is it decided that day? Whoever kicks that best day in practice, or are they just bringing a second guy to put pressure on the first guy? Somebody's going to make the decision. Yeah. The Dicker, the kicker, they've already made it. He's here, and he's going to kick if Elliott can't. If he double doinks one, of course, Dicker, the kicker, is going to take a lot of grief. But who else?
But listen, to be fair, everybody in the Arizona's Prater's hurt right now. They had in there.
This was a bad week to look for a kicker. There was so much kicker stuff going on in the NFL
everywhere, though. I feel like I watch all these games, and they're like, this guy's hurt. This is the kicker. Somebody else is kicking this week. Arizona, Amendola's in there kicking this week because Prater's out for them. There's been a lot of kicker turnover, and kickers are guys that most people have never heard of. You don't know where they came from. Some guy kicked a guy Cameron Dicker kicked at Texas. Like, it's not like some small unknown school. He's one of
all the Texas records.
He's one of the best kickers in the history of the program there. So
and who came from Texas? Justin Tucker. And who's the best kicker of all time? So
Michael Clay talked about this yesterday. See, I read the Michael Clay transcript, and he basically said it's a collaborative. It's a collaborative effort on who they asked for him for input, and then he turned it back around and said, "Well, I asked them for input." In other words, I don't know who the hell these kickers are. Just give me a guy, right? Yeah.
By the way, Jake Verity,
East Carolina.
Where?
Yeah, you guys remember him from East Carolina. Mike Gill knew East Carolina Pirates kicker. Also,
my girlfriend is an ECU alum.
There we go. Oh, I knew there had to be a story because nobody knows Jake
Verity was a character on Succession on HBO. I had no idea he was.
He is the other kicker the Eagles tried out and lost to the great Cameron Dicker. Now, Jake Verity, by the way, has been in camp with Baltimore, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville.
Would Cameron Dicker get a shot to supplant Sipos if he got there and said, "Hey guys, I can punt too"?
Well, I do think the rope is getting shorter with Aaron Sipos, but I don't think Dicker is an NFL level punter. He did go down to Baltimore. I think Baltimore signed him for 2 days, obviously not to be the kicker. And they designated him as a punter, but he lasted 2 days. So I don't know what that tells you.
Randy Brown doesn't like him, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Last one, Mike. Give us a score for Sunday. Eagles getting a 5-0 or no?
Arizona is a wretched home team. They are 9-1 in their last 10 road games. I think they're 1-7 in their last 8 home games. They stink at home. They're much better on the road. Injury issues. You got no Hopkins. I think that team is like every other team in the league, mediocre week to week. I think last week they went on the road and played very well. I watched a lot of that game against Carolina. I think they come back home and struggle. I like Eagles 34-20.
Not a bad score. So you got them winning relatively handily.
Mr. Gill score last week for Eagles Jacksonville. I was one off.
Ooh.
What you at? I had 30-20. I was damn close too.
31-29, I think. 31-20 I had, or 31-19.
I think I had 24-20 Eagles. I never give the Eagles enough credit, as people say. Yeah, I pick them to win every week.
He hasn't picked the cover yet, though. I picked them to cover all 4 times.
No, I won once. I picked them to cover once, but I pick them to win every week.
Oh, yeah, you did have them skins. They were 6.5, but I think you had them winning by 8 or something like that. All right, so Gill's got it by 2 touchdowns. Good job, Mike Gill. A pleasure. We will do it again next week, big guy.
All right, guys. See you.